Azaria Chamberlain. On the night of August 17th, 1980, at a campground at the base of Uluru, Australia's iconic Red Rock, Lindy Chamberlain put her 9-week-old baby, Azaria, to sleep in their tent. She was dressed in a little black jumpsuit. Lindy then rejoined her family and other campers at a nearby barbecue. Dingoes, the wild dogs of the Australian outback, had been seen lurking around the campsite all evening, but no one thought much of it. They were a common sight. Around 8 p.m., a baby's cry was heard. Lindy went to check on Azaria. As she approached the tent, she saw a dingo emerging from it, slinking off into the darkness. She rushed inside and found the bassinet empty. The blankets were stained with blood. Her baby was gone. Her now famous cry, "A dingo's got my baby," echoed through the campground, sparking a frantic, chaotic search in the dark. Azaria's body was never found. But what followed was a nightmare that was, in many ways, worse than the initial tragedy. The Australian public, fueled by a sensationalist media, turned on the Chamberlains. They were a Seventh-day Adventist family, and their stoic, seemingly unemotional reaction to their daughter's death was seen as suspicious. Rumors swirled that they were part of a strange cult, that they had sacrificed their own baby. Despite an initial inquest ruling that a dingo was responsible, the police reopened the case. In 1982, Lindy Chamberlain was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Her husband, Michael, was convicted as an accessory. It was a trial by media, a national witch hunt. It wasn't until 1986, when a piece of Azaria's torn and bloodied matinee jacket was found near a dingo lair, that the tide began to turn. Lindy was released, and her conviction was overturned. But it took another 26 years, until 2012, for a final coroner's inquest to officially rule that a dingo had taken and killed Azaria Chamberlain. 32 years of hell, all because no one believed a mother's impossible and horrifying story. Leah Davis Lokan. Leah Davis Lokan was not a novice. She was a 65-year-old nurse from California, an experienced and passionate mountain biker who was living her dream, bikepacking a section of the grueling Tour Divide route. On July 6, 2021, she and 2 fellow cyclists set up their lightweight tents in a small campground in the tiny town of Ovando, Montana. It was a peaceful spot near the Blackfoot River, but they were in grizzly country. Around 3 a.m., a 417-pound male grizzly bear wandered into their campsite. It sniffed around their tents, and the campers, startled awake, shouted and made noise until the bear ambled off. They had stored their food, but some toiletries and other scented items were still near the tents. An hour later, the bear came back. But this time, it wasn't just curious. It was predatory. It went straight for Leah's tent. The thin nylon wall of the tent was no match for the bear's power. It ripped the fabric open and dragged Leah out as she screamed into the night. Her fellow campers, horrified, tried to deploy their bear spray, but it was too late. The attack was swift and brutal. An autopsy would later reveal that Leah's neck was broken and her spine was severed. She had been killed instantly. Investigators found a nearly empty can of bear spray under or near her tent, a silent testament to her final, desperate struggle. 3 days later, wildlife officers tracked and shot the bear after it raided a nearby chicken coop. DNA confirmed it was the same animal. Leah's death was a tragic reminder of the raw, untamable power of the wilderness. She was an experienced outdoorswoman, doing everything right in a designated campground. But in the end, it didn't matter. The bear came for her, and in the dark of the Montana night, in the supposed safety of her tent, she was dragged out and broken. Geraldine, Gerry, Largay. This next story is a quiet one, a slow, agonizing, and incredibly lonely one. It's the story of a woman who vanished just a few feet from one of the most famous hiking trails in the world and died alone in her tent while an army of searchers passed her by, over and over again. In July 2013, Geraldine, Gerry, Largay, a 66-year-old retired nurse, was section hiking the Appalachian Trail. She was an avid hiker, but not an expert navigator. After her hiking partner had to leave due to a family emergency, Gerry continued on alone, heading for a lean-to campsite in a remote section of Maine. At some point, she stepped off the trail, likely to relieve herself. And then, she couldn't find her way back. In the dense, green labyrinth of the Maine woods, the narrow footpath had simply disappeared. Disoriented, she wandered deeper into the forest. But instead of panicking and moving further, she did what the survival manuals tell you to do. She stopped. She found a small clearing, set up her tent, and waited to be rescued. And she waited. And waited. For 26 days. Her journal, recovered 2 years later along with her remains, tells a heartbreaking story of her final weeks. She tried to text her husband, but the messages never went through. She wrote notes, begging for help. She wrote a final, gut-wrenching entry dated August 18th, 2013. "When you find my body, please call my husband George and my daughter Carrie. It will be the greatest kindness for them to know that I am dead and where you found me, no matter how many years from now." Her body was found on October 14th, 2015, by a forester. She had been dead for over 2 years. She had died of starvation and exposure, just a 30-minute walk from the trail. The search for Gerry Largay was one of the largest in Maine's history, but they never found her. She died alone in her tent, listening to the sounds of the forest, waiting for a rescue that never came. Nishma. Sometimes the danger isn't the wilderness itself. It's the illusion of wilderness. The carefully curated, Instagram-friendly version of camping that's sold to us as an authentic experience. This is the story of a young woman who died, not in the wild, but in a place that was pretending to be. In May 2025, a 24-year-old woman named Nishma was on a holiday with a group of friends at a trendy remote resort in the Wayanad district of Kerala, India. The resort, perched on a hilltop called 900 Candy, was only accessible by jeep. Its main attraction was its eco-tents, rustic structures with wooden frames and thatched roofs, designed to give guests the feeling of sleeping in the jungle. That night, a heavy monsoon rain began to fall, battering the exposed hilltop with wind and water. In the early hours of the morning, one of the eco-tents failed. The wooden support poles snapped, and the heavy, waterlogged thatched roof collapsed inwards, right on top of the sleeping guests. Nishma was trapped underneath the debris, pinned down by the weight of the collapsed structure. Her friends were injured, but they managed to get free. But Nishma was stuck. And because of the remote location and the treacherous weather, it took emergency services until the next morning to reach the resort. By the time they got to her, she was dead. She had suffocated under the weight of her own eco-friendly coffin. The police later arrested 2 people connected to the resort on negligence charges. The investigation revealed that the tents were not built to withstand the region's heavy monsoon rains. They were a facade, a dangerous imitation of a real shelter. Nishma's death is a tragic and infuriating example of what can happen when a business puts profits and aesthetics ahead of safety. The Luo Family. This is a story about a mother's love, about the instinct to protect, to keep your children warm and safe. And it's a story about how that very instinct, in a moment of quiet desperation, can turn a family's sanctuary into a silent, invisible death trap. On a cool November night in 2023, a Taiwanese family was camping in the mountains of Hsinchu County. Ms. Luo, a 40-year-old mother, was there with her 12-year-old twin daughters. As the temperature dropped to around 9 degrees Celsius, 48 Fahrenheit, the family used a charcoal stove to keep warm and cook their dinner. As the night grew colder, Ms. Luo made a fatal decision. She moved the still smoldering charcoal stove inside the tent where she and her daughters were sleeping to keep them warm through the night. She zipped the tent flaps closed, sealing them in against the cold. And as they slept, the burning charcoal silently filled the small, enclosed space with a colorless, odorless gas, carbon monoxide. There were no warning signs, no alarms, no cries for help. Carbon monoxide is a silent killer. It binds to the hemoglobin in your blood, displacing the oxygen your body needs to survive. Victims often just slip into unconsciousness and never wake up. And that's what happened in that tent. As the family slept, they were slowly, silently being poisoned. The next morning, when they didn't emerge from their tent, other campers went to check on them. They found Ms. Luo dead. Her two daughters were unconscious, but still alive. They were rushed to the hospital and treated for severe carbon monoxide poisoning. They survived. But their mother, the woman who had been trying to keep them warm, was gone. Allison Spahr. There's a certain kind of horror that comes with complete and utter randomness. The feeling that you can do everything right, be in the right place at the right time, and still, death can fall from the sky without warning. This is one of those stories. On the 1st of June 2014, the Spahr family was on a weekend camping trip in Wisconsin. Allison, a 10-year-old girl from Gerry, Illinois, was there with her parents and her 14-year-old brother. They had pitched their tent at a wooded campsite, like thousands of other families do every summer weekend. As they slept, a storm moved through the area. Around 4 a.m., a large tree, weakened by the wind and rain, suddenly toppled over, and it fell directly onto the Spahr family's tent. The heavy trunk crashed down on them as they slept, pinning them under a chaotic mess of splintered wood and torn fabric. Allison's brother managed to crawl free. Her father was pinned, but he survived. But Allison, the smallest and most vulnerable, was trapped under the heaviest part of the tree. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but it was too late. By the time they were able to cut away the tree and pull her from the wreckage, she was gone. She had been crushed to death in her sleep, in the supposed safety of her tent, right next to her family. Her death was a freak accident, a one-in-a-million tragedy. But it's a story that haunts every camper who has ever pitched a tent in the woods. The thought that the very trees that provide us with shade and shelter can, in an instant, become instruments of death.
Show you how it's done. I look so damn good at the 411. Come a little closer, let me spill the tea. You look so much better sitting close to me. Like ooh, ooh. I bet you wanna kiss me like ooh, ooh. In the morning gotta miss me like ooh, ooh. Now your head is getting busy, it's true. I got my spell on you. There's nobody like me, I can see you noticing. If you wanna try me, coming close and kiss the ring. I'm just so